Watt picked up his bags and got into the train.
Road for 3/4 of a mile.
He did not choose a compartment. It happened to be empty. On the platform, the porter continued to wheel cans up and down. At one end of the platform, there was one group of cans, and at the other end, there was another. The porter chose with care a can in one group and wheeled it to the other. Then he chose with care a can in the other and wheeled it to the one. He is sorting the cans, said Watt. Or perhaps it is a punishment for disobedience or some neglect of duty.
1,000 feet, turn right onto Frontage Road North. Right onto Frontage Road North.
Ooh, he bailed. He peeled out. He bailed on us.
Continue for 3 miles.
This seems crazy.
It does.
Jeez.
Completely psychotic.
Really psychotic. Watt sat with his back to the engine, which now, having got up steam, drew the long line of carriages out of the station. Already Watt preferred to have his back to his destination.
We're skipping the traffic.
He said it. But he had not gone far when, conscious of eyes upon him, he looked up and saw a large gentleman sitting in the corner diagonally opposed to his. This gentleman's feet rested on the wooden seat before him, and his hands were in the pockets of his coat. The compartment then was not so empty as Watt had at first supposed. "My name is Spyro," said the gentleman.
Spyro?
Yeah.
You're gonna have to project a little bit more.
Here then was a sensible man at last. He began with the essential and then, working on, would deal with the less important matters, one after the other, in an orderly way. Watt smiled. "No offense meant," said Mr. Spyro. Watt's smile was further peculiar in this, that it seldom came singly, but was followed after a short time by another, less pronounced, it is true. In this, it
Smile? Smile? Is that
Yeah.
what he's talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
In this, it resembled the fart. And it even sometimes happened that a third, very weak and fleeting, was found necessary before the face could be at rest again. But this was rare. And it will be a long time now before Watt smiles again, unless something very unexpected turns up to upset him.
Too upset.
I never had this much fun.
Yeah. Oh, it's the sheriff.
Watt's smile was, oh yes, here we go, but this is rare, unexpected. "My friends call me dumb," said Mr. Spiro. "I'm so bright and cheerful. D-U-M, anagram of mud." Mr. Spiro had been drinking, but not more than was good for him. "I edit Crux," said Mr. Spiro, "the popular Catholic monthly. We do not pay our contributors, but they benefit in other ways. Our advertisements are extraordinary. We keep our tonsure above water. Our prize competitions are very nice. Times are hard, water in every wine. Of a devout twist, they do more good than harm. For example, rearrange the 15 letters of the Holy Family to form a question and answer. Winning entry. Has J germs a po? Yes. Or, what do you know of the adjuration excommunication, malediction, and fulminating anathemas of the eels of Como, the herbers of Boyne, the rats of Lyon, the slugs of Macon, the worms of Como, the leeches of Lausanne, and the caterpillars of Valenca. Now the fields flew by, the hedges and the ditches, ghastly in the train's light, or disappeared to do so, for in reality it was the train that moved across a land forever still. Though we know what we know, said Mr. Spiro, we are not partisan. I personally am a neo-John Thomist. I make no bones about that, but I do not allow it to stand in the way of my promiscuities. Podex non destra sed sinistra. What pettiness.
Quarter mile. Turn left onto North Frontage Road.
Our columns are open to suckers of every persuasion, and freethinkers figure in our roll of honor. My own contribution to the supplementary redemption, a spiritual syringe for the costive in devotion.
Turn left onto North Frontage Road.
You're fine.
Still going on frontage road. We're not getting on I-4 yet.
Good.
Continue on North Frontage Road for 3 miles.
All right. A spiritual syringe for the costive in devotion is so elastic and unrigid that a Presbyterian might profit by it without discomfort. But why do I trouble you with this, you, a perfect stranger? It is because tonight I must speak to a fellow wanderer. Where do you get down, sir? Watt named the place. I beg your pardon, said Mr. Pirro. Watt named the place again. Then there is not a moment to lose, said Mr. Spiro. He drew a paper from his pocket and read, Lourdes, Bessus, Pyrenees, France, sir. A rat or other small animal eats of a consecrated wafer. Does he ingest the real body or does he not? If he does not, what has become of it?
Alligator, dead alligator. On the road.
Oh,
Did you
yeah?
see it?
No, I was busy. Okay, we're back to the rat. If he does,
Consecrated wafer.
if he does, what is to be done with him? Yours faithfully, Martin Ignatius Mackenzie, author of the Chartered Accountant's Saturday Night.
What?
Chartered Accountant's Saturday Night.
What's that?
I don't know what a chartered accountant does with his day off. Yeah. Mr. Spiro now replied to these questions. That is to say, he replied to question 1 and he replied to question 3. He did so at length, quoting from Saint Bonaventure, Peter Lombard, Alexander of Hales, Sanchez, Suarez, Heno, Soto, Diana, Cancena, and Dens, for he was a man of leisure. But Watt heard nothing of this, because of other voices, singing, crying, stating, murmuring things unintelligible in his ear. With these, if he was not familiar, he was not unfamiliar either. So he was not alarmed unduly. Now these voices, sometimes they sang only, and sometimes they cried only, and sometimes they stated only, and sometimes they murmured only, and sometimes they sang and cried, and sometimes they sang and stated, and sometimes they sang and murmured, and sometimes they cried and stated, and sometimes they cried and murmured.
This is so Watt is schizophrenic.
I don't know. He does this all through the book. You find the dogs. You have to replace each other. You have to have all these dogs on standby to eat the leftovers. To eat Watt's leftovers. No. Back. And sometimes they sang and cried and murmured. And sometimes they cried and stated and murmured. And sometimes they sang and cried and stated and murmured all together at the same time as now, to mention only these 4 kinds of voices, for there were others. And sometimes Watt understood all, and sometimes he understood much, and sometimes he understood little, and sometimes he understood nothing, as now.
Oh, good God.
But the racecourse now appearing with its beautiful white railing in the fleeing lights warned Watt that he was drawing near, and that when the train stopped next, then he must leave it. He could not see the stands, the grand, the members, the peoples, so question. When empty with their white and red, for they were too far off. So he settled his bags under.
In a quarter mile, turn left onto North Park Road.
So he settled his bags under his hands and held himself in readiness to leave the train the moment it came to a standstill.
1,000 feet, turn left onto North Park Road.
For Watt had once been carried past this station, then on to the next, through his not having prepared himself in time to get down when the train stopped. For this was a line so little frequented, especially at this hour, when the driver, the stoker, the guard, and the station staffs all along the line were annihilating towards their wives after the long hours of continence. The train would hardly draw up when it would be off again, like a bouncing ball.
What does that mean?
Annihilating. A-N-H-E.
400 feet, turn left onto North Park Road.
L-A-T-I-N-G. Personally,
Left onto North Park Road, then use the right lane to take the ramp to Tampa.
right. Personally, I would pursue him, said Mr. Spiro, if I were sure it was he, with all the rigor of the canon laws. He took his legs off the seat. He put his head out of the window, and pontifical decrees, he cried. A great rush of air drove him back. He was alone, flying through the night. The moon was now up. It was not far up, but it was up. It was of an unpleasant yellow color, long past the full. It was waning. Watt's way of advancing due east, for example, was to turn his bust as far as possible towards the north, and at the same time to fling out his right leg as far as possible towards the south, and then to turn his bust as far as possible towards the south, and at the same time to fling out his left leg as far as possible towards the north, and then again to turn his bust as far as possible towards the north, and to fling out his right leg as far as possible towards the south, and then again to turn his bust as far as possible towards the south, then to fling out his left leg as far as possible towards the north.
What is he doing? This is what he's like dancing on
No,
the
he's
side of
just
the...
sitting. That's how he sits down. No, Watt's way of advancing due east, for example, was to turn his bust as far as possible towards the north, so he's flinging out his legs to keep to move.
Okay.
Use the right lane to take the ramp to Tampa.
You got it, brother.
And so on, over and over again, many, many times, until he reached his destination and could sit down. So, standing first on one leg
Merge onto I-4 West.
and then on the other, he moved forward a headlong tardigrade in a straight line. The knees on these occasions did not bend. They could have, but they did not. No knees could better bend than Watt's when they chose. There's nothing the matter with Watt's knees, as may appear.
Louder.
But when out walking, they did not bend for some obscure reason. Notwithstanding this, the feet fell, heel and sole together, flat upon the ground, and left it for the air's uncharted ways with
50 feet. Merge onto I-4 West. Continue on I-4 West for half a mile.
Notwithstanding this, the feet fell,
Continue on I-4 West for half a mile.
heel and sole together, flat upon the ground, and left it for the air's uncharted ways with manifest repugnancy. The arms were content to dangle in perfect equipendency. Lady McCann, coming up behind, thought she had never on the public road seen motions so extraordinary, and few women had a more extensive experience of the public road than Lady McCann. That they were not due to alcohol appeared from their regularity and dogged air. Watts was a funambulistic stagger. More than the legs, the head impressed Lady McCann, for the movements of the legs could be accounted for in a number of ways, and she reflected on some of the ways in which the movements of the legs could be accounted for.
Slow down on I-4 West in 1.5 miles. You are still on the fastest route.
She recalled the old story of her girlhood days, the old story of the medical students and the gentleman walking before them with stiff and open stride. "Excuse me, sir," said one of the students, raising his cap when they drew abreast. "My friend here says it is piles, and I say it is merely the clap." We have all three then been received.
Piles.
Take exit 21 toward Alexander Street.
What? I'm supposed to be getting off the fucking highway?
That's what it said.
Why did I get onto I-4 in the first place then?
Got you to here.
Exit 21.
I can't get off.
You just must.
I mustn't.
Yeah.
It's not happening.
Up there.
Continue for 1 mile.
I mean, but then what's it gonna do?
It's gonna
Tommy?
tell you what to do next.
Continue for 1 mile.
Yeah. If you're going in, you gotta go all in. When they drew abreast, my friend here says it is piles, and I say it is merely the clap. We have all three then been deceived, replied the gentleman, for I thought it was wind myself. It was therefore less the legs that puzzled Lady McCann than the head, turning stiffly at every stride, on its stiff neck, under its hard hat, through a quarter of a circle.
Use the left lane to take the I-4 West ramp to Tampa.
Oh, this is literally just like a road that's going next to I-4 that's letting me jump around this traffic.
Great. It was therefore less the legs
Left lane to take the I-4 West ramp.
that puzzled Lady McCann than the head, turning stiffly at every stride, on its stiff neck,
Half a mile.
under its
Half
hard.
a mile. Merge on
God,
I-4
it's
West.
like, I mean, we're right in the middle of
Yeah,
a navigation here.
yeah. Where had she read that even so, from side to side, bears turn their heads when baited? In Mr. Walpole, perhaps. Though not a rapid walker,
You know, this reminds me a little bit of A. Milne, the Gallery of Children. The
Yeah.
writing style is actually
Yeah.
pretty similar, I would say.
I can get that. Though not a rapid walker, because of old habit, perhaps, and of her feet, which were old and sore. Lady McCann saw all this in greater and in greater detail with every step she took, for they were moving in the same direction, Lady McCann and Watt. Though not a timorous woman, as a rule, thanks to her traditions, Catholic and military. Lady McCann preferred to halt and wait, leaning on her parasol for the distance between them to increase. So now halting, now advancing, she followed the high stamping mass at a judicious...
On I-4 West for 18 miles.
I won't have to think for a while. So now halting, now advancing, she followed the high stamping mass at a judicious remove until she came to her gate. Here, faithful to the spirit of her cavalier ascendance, she picked up a stone and threw it with all her might, which, when she was roused, was not negligible, at Watt. And it is to be supposed that God, always favorable to the McCanns of so-and-so, guided her hand, for the stone fell on Watt's hat and struck it from his head to the ground. This was indeed a providential escape, for had the stone fallen on an ear or on the back of the neck, as it might so easily have done, as it so nearly did, why then a wound had perhaps been opened, never again to close, never again to close. For Watt had a poor healing skin, and perhaps his blood was deficient in, and he still carried, after 5 or 6 years, and though he dressed it in a mirror night and morning, on his right ischium, a running sore of traumatic origin.
It's just like one thought just blends into the next, you know.
That's just everyday
with
life.
Hardly a.
Why remark it at all?
Right. Yeah. Just one. Yeah. Just wait. So she threw a rock at him. Why did you do that?
I don't know.
She didn't like the way he was walking. Department of Silly Walks.
Beyond stopping and laying down his bags and picking up his hat and setting it on his head and picking up his bag and setting himself after 1 or 2 false starts, again in motion, Watt, faithful to his rule, took no more notice of this aggression than if it had been an accident. This he found was the wisest attitude, to staunch, if necessary, inconspicuously, with a little red sudarium that he always carried in his pocket, the flow of blood, to pick up what had fallen and to continue as soon as possible on his way or in his station, like a victim of mere mischance. But he deserved no credit for this, for it was an attitude become with frequent repetition, so part of his being that there was no more room in his mind for resentment at a spit in the eye, to take a simple example, than if his braces had burst or a bomb fallen on his bum. But he had not continued very far when, feeling weak, he left the crown of the road and sat down on the path, which was high and edged with thick, neglected grass. He knew as he did so that it would not be easy to get up again as he must, and move on again as he must. But the feeling of weakness which he had been expecting for some time was such that he yielded to it and settled himself on the edge of the path with his hat pushed back and his bags beside him and his knees drawn up and his arms on his knees and his head on his arms. The parts of the body are really very friendly at such times.
Parts of the body.
Towards one another. But this was a position that could not content him long in the fresh night air, and so he stretched himself out, so that one half of him was in the road and the other on the path.
What do we know about this guy so far?
He just walks funny.
Just that he walks funny and he was on the train. That's
Yeah. Others had him near them.
And now he's laying down to go to sleep
Apparently.
on the sidewalk.
He looks like the earth, the bounder, whoever that was. You guys don't remember the mountain bounder?
Yeah.
You do. Colin didn't remember. He would bound the whole world. Okay. The parts of the body are really very friendly at such times, but this was a position he stretched himself so when
Louder!
under the neck and under the distant palms he felt the cool, damp grasses of the ditch's edge. And so he rested for a little time, listening to the little night sounds in the hedge behind him, in the hedge outside him, hearing them with pleasure, and other distant night sounds too, such as dogs make on bright nights at the ends of their chains, and bats with their little wings, and the heavy day birds changing to a more comfortable position, and the leaves that are never still until they lie rotting in a wintry heap, and the breath that is never quiet. But this was a position that Watt, after a short time, found himself unable to sustain. And one of the reasons for that was perhaps this, that he felt the moon
Perhaps this.
was
The reason for that was perhaps this.
was that he felt the moon pouring its now whitening rays upon him.
It's like the kind of excesses of language, you know. The whole thing
Now I lay
is
thee
just-
down to rest.
The whole thing is just like, you know, icing.
There's no substance.
No substance.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, until they lie rotting in a wintry heap, and the breath that is never quiet. But this was a position that Watt, after a short time, found himself unable to sustain. In other words, one of the reasons for that, perhaps, is this, that he felt the moon pouring its now whitening rays upon him as though he were not there. For if there were two things that Watt disliked, one was the moon and the other was the sun. So, settling his hat firmly on his head and reaching forward, oh no, here are some lists.
Oh no.
You better take a picture. Oh, it's videotaping. I can't take a picture. His bags. He rolled himself over into the ditch and lay there on his face, half buried in the wild long grass, the foxgloves, the hyssop, pretty nettles, the high pounding hemlock, and other ditch weeds and flowers. It was to him lying thus that there came, with great distinctness from afar, from without, yes, really it seemed from without, the voices, indifferent in quality, of a mixed choir. All right, take a stab at this song. 52.2857145714 Grandma, Ma. Thanks and you withered, thanks you, thanks and you forgotten, thanks
There's a
and
stalled vehicle ahead.
you thanks forgotten to great grandma, Ma grew, and the same to you. This verse was followed by a second. 51.1 428 571. Oh, a bun, a big fat yellow bun for Mr. Man, and a bun for Mrs. Man, and a bun for Master Man, and a bun for Miss Man, and a big fat bun for everyone. That's it. Well, just let me finish.
I don't care about the song.
428571.
So it must be a phone number.
428571. Till all the buns are done and everyone is gone home to oblivion. The singing then ended.
Good God.
live in this traffic every day.
Well, this is just traffic because there's an accident.
Yeah, okay. Of these two verses, Watt thought he preferred the former. Bun is such a sad word, is it not? And the man is not much better, is it? But by this time, Watt was tired of the ditch, which he had been thinking of leaving, when the voices detained him. And one of the reasons why he was tired of the ditch was perhaps this, that the earth, whose contours and peculiar smell the vegetation at first had masked, now he felt it and smelt it, the bare, hard, dark, stinking earth. And if there were two things that Watt loathed...
What a weird building.
Yeah, it's the Ark.
This looks like a boat.
It's the Ark.
What Ark?
Yeah, it's a Disney attraction.
We're still fucking hour away, Dad.
Well, I'm glad we're having fun reading and listening, because that's about all we're getting out of it so far. It looks like $75 for... Maybe it'll turn out okay.
Where did you buy the seats?
Where are they? Around home plate. And if there were two things that Watt loathed, one was the earth and the other was the sky. So he crawled out of the ditch.
The sun, the moon.
So he crawled out of the ditch, not forgetting his bags, and resumed his journey with less difficulty than he had feared at the point where it had been interrupted by the feeling of weakness. This feeling of weakness Watt had left, together with his evening meal of goat's milk and insufficiently cooked cod, in the ditch, and it was with confidence that he now advanced in the middle of the road, with confidence and with awe also, for the chimneys of Mr. Knott's house were visible at last in the light of the moon. The house was in darkness. Oh, we're there. Finding the front door locked, Watt went to the back door. He could not very well ring or knock, for the house was in darkness. Finding the back door locked also, Watt returned to the front door. Finding the front door still locked, Watt returned to the back door. Finding the back door now open.
What?
Oh, not wide open, but on the latch, as the saying is, Watt was able to enter the house. Ordinary rats. Watt was surprised to find the back door, so lately locked, now open. Two explanations of this occurred to him. The first was this.
Are we never going to get an explanation for why that lady threw the rock at him?
Obviously not. She's a lesser character. Something
She
like
threw the rock at him. He kept walking. Then he laid down in a ditch.
and threw up.
And then he threw up?
He left his something of goat milk and undercooked cod in the ditch beside him. Something like that. So lately locked, now open. Two explanations of this occurred to him. The first was this, that his science of the locked door, so seldom at fault, had been so on this occasion, and that the back door, when he had found it locked, had not been locked, but open. And the second was this, that the back door, when he had found it locked, had in effect been locked, but had subsequently been opened from within or without by some person, while he, Watt, had been employed in going to and fro from the back door to the front door, and from the front door to the back door.
What the hell?
Why?
I don't know.
Make it stop.
It's just exceptional.
Ugh, isn't it?
I can't really imagine myself being able to read this
Oh, you could.
on my own.
I've read all this stuff. I never got one thought of mirth or fun. And then I think I
Do you
told.
think he was a comedic writer?
Oh God, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, the story that I remember is that somehow he had self-published the 3 novels, which are called Malloy, Malone Dies, and The Unnameable. And that there were like these 5 or 6 young men who discovered one of the books, and they took it home and they read it all night, just laughing their ass off, like we're doing.
And that's how he became famous?
They carried him onward and upward. Yeah.
Jesus, what's happening now?
Doesn't matter, Devin.
Do matter.
No, nothing we can do about it. Of these 2 explanations, Watt thought he preferred the latter as being the more beautiful. For if someone had opened the back door from within or without, would not he, Watt, have seen a light or heard a sound? Or had the door been unlocked from within in the dark by some person perfectly familiar with the premises and wearing carpet slippers or in his stockinged feet? Or from without by some person so skillful on his legs that his footfalls made no sound? Or had a sound been made, a light shone, and Watt not heard the one nor seen the other? The result of this was that Watt never knew how he got into Mr. Knott's house. He knew that he got in by the back door, but he was never to know how the back door came to be opened. And if the back door had never opened, but remained shut, then who knows, Watt had never got into Mr. Knott's house at all, but turned away and returned to the station and caught the first train back to town, unless he had got in through a window.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? Like, it's almost like this, like, there's something about the cadence of it that's, like, biblical or something.
Oh, yeah.
Or, like, just, like, ritualistic, religious, you know, somehow
Yeah.
when they're, like, sort of
Chanting.
and so hath begotten so
Yes,
and so,
yes,
and they were begotten of thereby from whence.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like this.
Very good. No sooner had Watt.
Formality of it. There's so much formality to the description of just absolute nothing.
Right.
You know, and I think that's where the comedy lies.
No sooner had Watt crossed Mr. Knott's threshold than he saw that the house was not in such darkness as he had at first supposed, for a light was burning in the kitchen. When Watt reached this light, he sat down beside it on a chair. He set down his bags beside him on the beautiful red floor, and he took off his hat, for he had reached his destination, discovering his scant red hair, and laid it on the table beside him. And a pretty picture they made, Watt's scalp and the red-gray tufts, and the floor burning up from below. Watt saw in the grate of the range the ashes gray, but they turned pale red when he covered the lamp with his hat. The range was almost out, but not quite. A handful of dried chips, and the flames would spring, merry in appearance, up the chimney with an organ note. So Watt busied himself a little while, covering the lamp less and less, more and more, with his hat, watching the ashes gray and redden in the grate of the range. Watt was so busy doing this, moving his hat to and fro behind him, that he neither saw nor heard the door open and the gentleman come in. So his surprise was extreme when he looked up from his little game, for it was no more than that, an innocent little game to while away the time. Here then was something again that Watt would never know, for want of paying due attention to what was going on about him. Not that it was a knowledge that could be of any help to Watt, or any hurt, or cause him any pleasure, or cause him any pain, for it was not. But he found it strange to think of these little changes of scene, the little gains, the little losses, the thing brought, the thing removed, the light given, the light taken, and all the vain offerings to the hour. Strange to think of all these little things that cluster around the comings and the stayings and the goings, that he would know nothing of them, nothing of what they had been as long as he lived, nothing of when they came, of how they came, and how it was then compared with before, nothing of how long they stayed, of how long they stayed, of how they stayed, and what difference that made, nothing of when they went, of how they went, and how it was then compared with before they came, before they went.
What is he talking about? I kind of lost track of what the fuck he's talking about.
You do. You just do. The gentleman wore a fine, full apron of green baize.
How do you spell it?
B-A-I-Z-E. Kathy would know. Watt thought he had never seen a finer apron. In front there was a great pocket or pouch, and in this the gentleman's hands were buried. Watt saw the little movements of the stuff, the little bulgings and crumplings, and the sudden indrawings where it was nipped between forefinger and thumb, probably, for those are the nippers. The gentleman gazed long at Watt and then went away, without a word of explanation. Then Watt, for want of something to do, went back to his little game with the colors. But he soon gave over, and the reason for that was perhaps this.
The reason for that is this. That's his favorite.
Was perhaps
saying.
this.
The reason for that was perhaps this.
There you go. That the ashes would not redden anymore, but remain gray even in the dimmest light. Finding himself now alone, with nothing in particular to do, Watt put his forefinger in his nose, first in one nostril and then in the other, but there were no crusts in Watt's nose tonight. But in a short time the gentleman reappeared to Watt. He was dressed for the road and carried a stick. But no hat was on his head nor any bag in his hand. Before leaving, he made the following short statement. Nothing short about it.
So it's going on and on.
No
That's the
paragraphs.
statement.
No paragraphs. There we go.
Short statement.
From 37 to 64.
Jesus. This is what the gentleman said before.
Yes.
Okay.
That's very important. It's a series of carekeepers for Watt.
Carekeepers?
Caregivers.
Caregivers?
Caregivers for Watt. We should jump ahead to when they make him a stew.
Well, what's the guy gonna say?
You ready for it? Why not? How it all comes back to me, to be sure. That look, that weary, watchful vacancy. The man arrives. The dark ways all behind, all within. The long dark ways in his head, in his side, in his hands.
Use the left lane to take exit 2 for Selman Expressway toward Florida 618 toll west, port of Tampa.
In his his hands and feet, and he sits in the red gloom, picking his nose, waiting for the dawn to break. The dawn, the sun, the light, ha! The long blue days for his head, for his side, and the little paths for his feet, and all the brightness to touch and gather. Through the grass, the little moss paths, bony with old roots, and the trees sticking up, and the flowers sticking up, and the fruit hanging down, and the white exhausted butterflies.
White exhausted butterflies.
And the birds never the same, darting all day into hiding, and all the sounds meaning nothing. Then at night rest in the quiet house. There are no roads, no streets anymore. We lie down by a window, opening on refuge. The little sounds come that demand nothing, ordain nothing, explain nothing, propound nothing, and the short necessary night is soon ended.
Use the left lane to take exit 2 for Selman Expressway toward Florida 618 Toll West, Port of Tampa.
And the sky blue again over all the secret places where nobody ever comes. The secret places never the same, but always.
Use the left lane to take exit 2 for Selman Expressway toward Florida 618 Toll West, Port of Tampa. Use the left lane to take exit 2.
Okay.
For 10 miles.
10 miles, that sounds good. And the short necessary night is soon ended, and the sky blue again over all the secret places where nobody ever goes. Maybe I'm supposed to say comes. The secret place is never the same, but always simple and indifferent. Always mere places, sights of a stirring beyond coming and going, of a being so light and free that it is as the being of nothing. How I feel it all again after
I
so.
don't know if I'm going the right fucking way.
Of course you are.
No, I don't know.
It
that I
always
am.
says.
No, because it should have told me just now, like.
Okay.
I really don't know.
Yeah.
Because this is a total labyrinth.
They're going to start telling you how to turn around and go, find an escape if you did wrong. That will be bad. I never need a cigarette, but I'd like one now. Ever notice? I go without. How I feel it all again after so long, here and in my hands and in my eyes, like a face raised, a face offered, all trust and innocence and candor, all the old soil and fear and weakness offered to be sponged away and forgiven. Ha! Or did I never feel it till now? Now when there is no warrant, it wouldn't surprise me. All forgiven and healed forever, in a moment, tomorrow. 654 hours still of the old dark, the old burden. Lightning, lightning. For one has come to stay. So someone has showed up and is replacing him. Watt is there to replace this guy.
Oh, okay.
Hey, this starts looking like a town. But you still have to go over that bridge. Right?
Yeah, I guess.
10 miles. Arena. That's what we from. For he has has arrived. All is repaid, amply repaid, for he has arrived. He even ventures to remove his hat. He removes his hat without misgiving. He removes his coat, he unbuttons his coat and sits down, proffered all pure and open to the long joys of being himself, like a basin to a vomit, or not in idleness, for there is work to do. That is what is so exquisite. Having oscillated all his life between the torments of a superficial loitering and the horrors of disinterested endeavor, he finds himself at last in a situation where to do nothing exclusively would be an act of the highest value and significance. And what happens? For the first time since in anguish and disgust he relieved his mother of her milk, definite tasks of unquestionable utility are assigned to him. Is not that charming? I suggest something.
The boaters. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We've made real progress, Devin.
What?
We've made real progress.
On the book?
Yeah, sure. Everything.
What?
Mr. Knott was a good master in a way. Watt had no direct dealings with Mr. Watt at this period. Not that Watt was ever to have any direct dealings with Mr. Knott, for he was not. But he thought at this period that the time would come when he would have direct dealings with Mr. Knott on the first floor. Yes, he thought that time would come for him, as he thought it had ended for our scene and for Erskine just begun. For the moment, all Watt's work was on the ground floor. Even the first floor slops that he emptied. It was Erskine who carried them down every morning in a pail. We have stopped midway through page 64.